I never thought I'd spend a week learning how fragile my sense of self really was. But that's exactly what happened the day I met her, the woman next door. It started with a knock. Sharp, precise, like someone who already knew I'd come to the door. I remember hesitating, my hand trembling on the handle. I'd been up late the night before, again, secretly trying on the pale pink satin robe that wasn't mine. The one I told myself I kept for the softness of the fabric, not the way it made me feel. I'd hidden it under my bed as soon as I heard the sound. When I opened the door, there she was, tall, composed, and dressed in a black pencil skirt that looked tailored to perfection. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes studied me like I was something she'd already figured out. "You're Alex, right?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "I live next door." I nodded, trying to sound casual.
"Yeah, hi.
I, haven't seen you around much." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "That's because I've been watching, not visiting." The way she said it made my throat go dry. Watching? What did she mean? I laughed awkwardly, but her gaze didn't waver. Then she leaned in slightly and said, almost in a whisper, "I think we need to talk about what you've been doing behind those curtains." My entire body froze. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say she was mistaken. But deep down, I knew exactly what she meant. My secret, the one I'd guarded for years, had been seen. She didn't wait for an answer. "Come to my house tomorrow at 5 p.m., she said simply. "Don't wear your usual clothes. Bring that pink robe you think I haven't noticed." And with that, she turned around and walked away. I stood there for a full minute after she left, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out the world. I didn't know her name. I didn't know what she wanted. All I knew was that she'd seen through me, and part of me was terrified, but another part felt something else. Something I couldn't name yet. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the authority in her voice, the unspoken promise that tomorrow, something would change. By 4:30 the next day, I was pacing my small apartment, robe folded neatly in my hands. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I had no reason to obey a stranger. But at 4:55, I was standing outside her door. The sound of my knock was weak, hesitant. "Come in," she said from inside, her tone unyielding. The moment I stepped into her house, I knew I wasn't in control anymore. Everything about her living room was meticulous, not fancy, but deliberate. Candles on the mantel, a mirror angled toward the center of the room, a wooden chair in front of it. "Sit," she instructed. I obeyed, without question. She circled me slowly, the click of her heels echoing with each step. "You think hiding makes it go away?" she said softly. "You think pretending to be someone you're not keeps you safe?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. My pulse was racing. Then she placed her hands on my shoulders, firm, grounding, and whispered, "For the next 7 days, you're going to stop pretending." My throat tightened. What do you mean?" She smiled slightly. "I mean, Alex, that you're going to learn to face what you've been running from. You're going to learn who you really are." Her reflection met mine in the mirror. She stood tall behind me, her posture calm and certain, while I sat small and trembling. "Put on the robe," she said. I hesitated, my fingers trembling as I unfolded the soft fabric. I could feel her watching every motion, every nervous breath. When the robe finally touched my skin, something inside me cracked open, not from shame, but from the weight of being seen. She stepped closer, tilting my chin up to meet my reflection. "That's better," she murmured. "You look almost honest now." My eyes stung. "I'm not." "Yes," she interrupted gently. "You are." She moved around to face me, her gaze softer now. 7 days, Alex. 7 days of rules, reflection, and discipline. You'll do as I say, or you can walk out that door and go back to lying to yourself. I swallowed hard. "And if I stay?" "Then," she said, leaning close enough that I could feel her breath, "you'll finally understand what it means to stop hiding." Something in her tone made me nod, even though my whole body was trembling. "Good," she said, "because the first lesson begins now." She reached for the mirror and turned it slightly toward the light. Look at yourself, she said. Really look. Tell me what you see. I wanted to say a man, but the word caught in my throat. What I saw in the mirror wasn't so simple anymore. The soft folds of the robe framed my shoulders. My face looked gentler, almost curious. The reflection felt like a stranger, and yet familiar. I don't know, I whispered. She smiled, her voice almost kind. That's the right answer. By the end of the week, you will. And as the candlelight flickered across the mirror's surface, I felt something shift deep inside, the faint beginning of surrender. That was day one. The day I met the mistress next door. The day I stopped pretending I didn't want to change. I woke up the next morning before the sun, the air heavy with unease. I kept replaying every second from the night before. The way she spoke, how effortlessly she saw through me, the way my reflection had seemed different. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that it had just been curiosity, a strange moment of weakness. But as the clock moved closer to 5 in the evening, I found myself staring at that pink robe again, neatly folded on my bed like it was waiting for me. By 4:50, I was already standing outside her door again. My stomach churned with nerves, but something deeper, something quieter, pulled me there. When she opened the door, she didn't greet me with words. She just looked at me, her eyes sharp, measuring. Then she nodded once and stepped aside to let me in. Day 2, she said calmly, closing the door behind me. You came back. That tells me you're not just curious anymore. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what I was anymore. Her house smelled faintly of lavender and something warm, like vanilla candles. The room was the same as before, except now there was a folded white dress laid out neatly on the chair in front of the mirror. Today, she said, walking around me slowly, you're going to start understanding obedience. Not the kind that breaks you, the kind that strips away the lies you hide behind. I looked at the dress, heart pounding. You want me to wear that? She tilted her head slightly. No. I want you to see what it feels like to stop fighting yourself. Her tone wasn't cruel, but it left no room for argument. I reached out, hesitating before touching the fabric. It was soft, almost weightless. I'd seen dresses like it in store windows. Elegant, simple, nothing like the flashy clothes I secretly imagined wearing. But this one felt like it belonged to a version of me I hadn't met yet. As I changed, she didn't turn away. She stood quietly, watching with that same composed expression. And somehow, her gaze didn't feel invasive. It felt intentional, like she was holding up a mirror for me to see something beyond the fabric. When I finally looked up, she nodded approvingly. Good. Now, she said, gesturing to the mirror, look again. I did. And for the first time, the reflection didn't look like a costume. It looked like a possibility. Tell me what you see, she said. I swallowed. Someone who doesn't look as scared. Her lips curved faintly. Progress. She stepped closer, adjusting the collar of the dress gently. You've spent years controlling every detail, haven't you? Always afraid of what people might think. I nodded, ashamed. I just didn't want anyone to know. To know what? I hesitated. The words caught in my throat like something heavy. That I don't always feel like him. Silence filled the space. Then she whispered, Good. That's the first honest thing you've said since you walked in here. She placed a small silver bracelet in my hand. This is your reminder. For the next 6 days, you'll wear it. It's not jewelry. It's accountability. Every time you look at it, I want you to ask yourself if you're being honest about who you are. I slid it onto my wrist. It fit perfectly, cold at first, then warm against my skin. Her expression softened. Discipline isn't punishment, Alex. It's truth in motion. Today, your only task is to stay in that dress until sunset. Don't hide. Don't cover it. Walk home like this. Let the world see the reflection you've been running from. My eyes widened. You mean go outside like this? Yes, she said simply. Because change doesn't happen in locked rooms. Every instinct screamed against it. The thought of stepping out, of anyone seeing me like this, made my chest tighten. But her voice was calm, grounding. You don't need to explain yourself to anyone.
Not today. Just walk. Feel the air.
Let the fear pass through you. I hesitated at the door, my heart racing. What if someone sees me? She smiled gently. Then they'll see someone learning to be brave. Her words echoed in my head as I stepped out. The first few steps felt impossible. My legs felt weak, my pulse thundering in my ears. The evening light hit the fabric of the dress, and I felt completely exposed. Every sound, every glance from a passerby felt amplified. But somewhere between my front gate and the corner of the street, something shifted. People weren't staring. The world wasn't collapsing. The sky was still the same soft orange, the breeze still gentle. And in that moment, walking home in silence, I realized the world wasn't as cruel as the voice in my head had made it. When I finally made it home, I sat in front of my mirror again. My reflection looked exhausted, but peaceful. The bracelet gleamed faintly under the light. And for the first time, I whispered to myself, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not hiding anymore. That night, before I slept, I caught myself smiling. Not because I liked what I saw, but because I was finally starting to see something real. That was day 2. The first time I faced the world as something closer to who I truly was. And the first time I felt, in a way I couldn't explain, free. When I woke up the next morning, the bracelet was the first thing I saw. Its silver surface caught the faint morning light, and for a second, I thought I saw her reflection in it. Calm, steady, unyielding. It had only been 2 days, yet something about my apartment already felt foreign. My clothes, hanging neatly in the closet, suddenly looked like props from a life I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. Still, a part of me resisted. The part that whispered I was just playing along, that I could stop any time I wanted. By the time I knocked on her door again, I'd almost convinced myself yesterday hadn't meant as much as it felt. She answered instantly, as if she'd been waiting. Her expression was unreadable. "You came again," she said simply. I nodded. "You said 7 days." She studied me for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Good. Because today won't be easy." Inside, the mirror was gone. The chair remained, and beside it, on the table, lay a small notebook.
"Sit," she said. I did. My hands fidgeted in my lap.
"Tell me," she began quietly, "what were you thinking when you walked home yesterday?" I hesitated. That I was terrified. And after? I looked down. That maybe I liked it. Her eyes softened slightly, but her voice stayed calm. "Liked what?" "The feeling of not pretending," I said, almost whispering. "Of not hiding who I am." She nodded once. "Good. Now write it down." I blinked. "Right? In the notebook," she said, tapping the cover lightly. "Every thought that comes up when you see yourself honestly. No censoring. No excuses. Just truth." I picked up the pen. It felt heavier than I expected. I hesitated before writing the first words. My handwriting looked awkward, like even the letters weren't sure who they were supposed to be. At first, I wrote slowly. Fragments. Half thoughts. "I'm scared. I feel strange. I don't know what I want." But the longer I wrote, the less control I had. The words started to pour out, everything I'd buried under years of fear. Memories of being told how a man should act. The laughter that followed when I didn't fit. The ache of pretending to belong in a skin that never felt fully mine. When I finally stopped, my hand ached. She took the notebook gently, glancing at a few lines. Then, without reading aloud, she closed it and set it aside. "Do you know why I made you write that?" she asked. I shook my head. "Because discipline isn't about obedience," she said softly. "It's about clarity. You can't rebuild yourself while you're still carrying someone else's voice in your head." Her words hit harder than I expected. My throat tightened. "But what if? I'm just confused." She smiled faintly. "Confusion is just truth with too much noise around it." Then she reached into a small box and handed me a delicate hairbrush. "Today's lesson," she said, "is reflection without illusion." She guided me toward the window, where the faint afternoon light softened the edges of the glass. "You'll sit here," she said, "and brush your hair until you can meet your reflection without looking away." It sounded simple, but it wasn't. The moment I saw my face, bare and uncertain, something inside me twisted. My first instinct was to look down, to avoid the vulnerability staring back. But her voice from behind stopped me. Don't run. Not this time. So, I forced myself to stay. Stroke by stroke, I brushed, slowly, evenly, letting the rhythm calm me. At first, all I saw were flaws.
My jawline.
My shoulders. The faint shadow of who I'd been trying to hide. But as the light shifted, so did something in my reflection. The face staring back wasn't flawless, but it was real. Softer, somehow. Braver. Tears welled up before I realized it. I didn't even know why. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. You're crying because you've never let yourself look at her before. Her words broke me. I don't know who I am anymore, I said, my voice cracking. Yes, you do, she replied gently. You just haven't allowed yourself to believe it yet. I turned toward her, eyes burning. Why are you doing this?
You don't even know me.
She paused, and for the first time, her calm mask cracked just slightly. Because once, someone did it for me. That silence between us carried something raw, a shared understanding neither of us had planned to reveal. She placed her hand lightly on my shoulder. Tomorrow, she said quietly, you'll learn to speak the truth, not just see it. That will be your next step. Then she looked toward the door. Go home. And don't wipe the tears. Let them remind you you're changing. I walked home through the fading light, the cool air brushing my damp cheeks. Each step felt heavier and lighter at once. When I reached my apartment, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My eyes were still red, but I didn't look away. For the first time in my life, I didn't see weakness. I saw release. That was day 3. The day I stopped being ashamed of my reflection and started listening to the voice I'd buried for years. The next morning, I didn't even wait for the clock. For the first time in years, I woke with a sense of purpose. Quiet, trembling, but real. The bracelet caught the morning light again, and this time, I didn't look away from it. When I arrived at her door, she was already waiting, standing by the doorway with a cup of tea in her hand, as if she'd known exactly when I'd appear. You're early, she said with a faint smile. I didn't want to be late. Her eyes softened, almost approvingly.
Good.
That means the lessons are starting to settle. She led me inside. The air smelled of jasmine this time, calm and grounding. On the chair where the mirror once stood, there was now a small box tied with a pale ribbon. Today, she said, you're going to learn how to speak from truth, not from fear. I tilted my head slightly. What do you mean? Yesterday, you saw yourself, she said. Today, you give that self a voice. She gestured to the box. Open it. Inside, folded neatly, was a soft blue blouse and a long flowing skirt, simple but elegant, the kind of outfit that felt quietly confident.
Go change, she said.
When I returned, the air in the room felt different. The clothes weren't just fabric anymore. They felt like armor made of honesty. She stood behind me, looking at my reflection in the window. Now, she said, tell me who you are. I froze. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Say it, she urged gently, out loud. I stopped. The words caught like stones in my throat. I'd said my name 1,000 times before, but it suddenly felt hollow, like a word that belonged to someone else. Start where it feels real, she said softly. Don't name yourself yet. Just describe what you feel. I closed my eyes. The silence stretched. Then slowly the words began to form. I feel like I've been pretending to fit into something that never felt right. Like I've been waiting for permission to breathe. Her voice was barely above a whisper. And now, I swallowed hard, looking at the reflection again. Now I think I'm ready to stop asking for permission. She smiled, a rare, proud kind of smile. That, she said, is the first truth you've ever said that belongs entirely to you. She handed me a small pendant, a simple charm with a delicate design etched into it. This isn't decoration, she said. It's acknowledgement. Every person who finds their voice deserves a symbol of it. I took it carefully, feeling the cool metal warm against my skin. You really think I can do this? Her expression softened. You already are. Then her tone shifted, quieter, but firm again. Today's discipline isn't silence. It's honesty. You'll go to the cafe across the street. You'll order a drink, sit, and speak to the world without apology. My heart skipped. You want me to talk? Like this?
Yes.
Like yourself. Not hiding. Not shrinking. Just being. The thought terrified me and thrilled me. The cafe wasn't far, but the distance felt symbolic, like crossing a line between who I was and who I was becoming. When I stepped inside, the familiar hum of conversation filled the air. People glanced up briefly, then went back to their coffee and screens. I ordered tea. My voice trembled at first, but the barista just smiled politely, as if nothing about me was out of place. And that small, ordinary kindness felt revolutionary. I sat by the window, the pendant resting against my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like I was performing. I just existed. When I returned, she was waiting by the window, arms crossed but smiling faintly. Well, she asked. I did it, I said quietly. And nothing bad happened. She laughed softly. The world rarely punishes honesty as much as we think it will. It's ourselves we fight the most. Her laughter faded into something thoughtful. Tomorrow will test that truth. You've faced reflection and voice. Next comes perception, seeing how others mirror what you project. What do you mean? You'll understand when it's time. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed every small moment from the cafe. Every glance, every word. None of them carried the judgment I'd feared. Maybe the world had been kinder all along. Maybe it was me who hadn't been kind to myself. The bracelet glimmered faintly on my wrist as I drifted to sleep, the words she'd said echoing softly. It's ourselves we fight the most. By the 5th morning, I thought I was getting stronger. I'd faced my reflection, found my voice, even walked through the world without hiding. But confidence, I learned, is fragile. It can disappear the moment someone looks at you the wrong way. The day began differently. She didn't open her door when I knocked. I waited for several minutes before it finally swung open. She didn't greet me with her usual calm smile. Instead, her tone was distant. You're late, she said, even though I wasn't. I frowned. I came at the usual time. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then maybe you've gotten too comfortable. The shift in her energy unsettled me. I'd grown used to her warmth hidden behind her authority, but today, her presence felt cold, like the air before a storm. Today, she said, her voice clipped, you'll learn the difference between confidence and complacency. She gestured to the center of the room. The mirror had returned, larger than before, and behind it stood a rack of clothes. Dresses, skirts, blouses, all in different colors and styles. What is this? I asked softly. Choice, she said. You've been wearing what I've given you. Today, you choose for yourself. But remember, every choice reveals what you truly believe about who you are. I hesitated, stepping closer to the rack. My hands brushed over the fabrics. Some felt delicate, others bold. I picked up a soft lilac dress, then hesitated. She crossed her arms. Second thoughts already. I swallowed. I don't want to look ridiculous. Her expression didn't change. Ridiculous to whom? I didn't answer. The silence between us stretched. That's what I thought, she said quietly. You're still dressing for the world, not for yourself. Her words stung. That's not fair. I'm trying. Her voice was calm but firm. Trying is hesitation dressed as effort. I clenched my fists, frustration bubbling up. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, she said sharply, stepping closer. But it is necessary. You say you want to stop hiding, yet every step you take is still measured by fear. Do you think transformation is just about clothes and mirrors? It's about standing tall even when you're shaking inside. Her words hit too close to home. I'm not like you, I snapped. You're strong. You don't care what people think. I do, For the first time, I saw something flicker behind her calm, not anger, but recognition. "You think I was born this way?" she asked softly.
No.
I was built by every cruel word, every stare. Every night, I wanted to give up. Strength isn't a gift, Alex. It's a scar you learn to carry beautifully. Her tone softened then, and she stepped back. "You can leave if you want. Go home, pretend this week never happened. But if you stay, if you truly want to finish, then today, you'll face what you fear the most." The challenge in her voice made my heart pound. "What do I have to do?" "Put on the dress you're afraid of wearing." My gaze drifted back to the rack. The dress that scared me wasn't the boldest or the brightest. It was a simple red one. Red had always felt too visible, too loud. The color of attention. My hands trembled as I took it down. I could feel her watching as I slipped it on. The fabric hugged me like truth, unforgiving, impossible to ignore. When I turned toward the mirror, my breath caught. The reflection was striking, not perfect, but powerful. And that terrified me more than anything. I started. "Alive," she finished for me. I turned away. "I can't wear this outside." "You can," she said. "But first you have to believe you deserve to." I shook my head, pacing. "Everyone will stare. They'll laugh." "Maybe," she said. "But their laughter will never hurt as much as your silence." The words hit deep. I stood there for what felt like forever, caught between the reflection and the fear. Finally, I whispered, "What if I fail?" She stepped closer, her voice soft but unwavering. "Then you'll fail honestly. And that's still more beautiful than living a lie." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I realized she wasn't trying to control me. She was trying to free me. When I finally nodded, her expression softened. "Good," she said. "Then go. Walk outside. Not to prove anything. Not to rebel. Just to exist." The air outside felt electric, the world sharper somehow. Every sound, every step, felt amplified. I walked to the edge of the street and stopped. A few people glanced my way, their expressions unreadable. One woman smiled faintly. A man looked curious, not cruel. And then, something unexpected happened. A small girl, maybe 6 or 7, tugged at her mother's sleeve and said, "Mom, she's pretty." The mother smiled and nodded. "Yes, she is." That one word, she, echoed inside me like a melody I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. When I got home that night, I sat in front of the mirror again. My reflection didn't scare me anymore. The fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer owned me. The bracelet shimmered softly as I whispered, "Maybe strength isn't about being fearless. Maybe it's about walking through fear and still choosing yourself." That night, I slept peacefully, not because I was certain of who I was, but because for the first time, uncertainty felt like growth. That was day 5. The day I stopped fighting the world and started standing beside myself. I didn't realize how much I'd changed until I saw the sunrise that morning. It looked the same, soft gold bleeding into pink, yet somehow, it felt different. As if the world was breathing slower, giving me room to exist in it. When I walked to her house, I wasn't nervous. My steps were steady. My reflection in the window of each shop I passed no longer startled me. I didn't look like the person I used to be, not just in what I wore, but in how I carried myself. She opened the door before I could knock. Her face softened instantly. "You've changed," she said, almost to herself. "Maybe," I replied, smiling faintly. "No," she corrected. "Not maybe. You have. I can see it in the way you stand." Inside, the candles were already lit, and soft instrumental music played in the background, something calm, slow, almost meditative. On the table sat a small makeup kit, brushes laid out neatly beside a folded shawl of pale lavender. "Today," she said, "we focus on grace." I blinked. "Grace?" "Yes," she said, motioning for me to sit. "You've faced your fear and your reflection. You've found your voice. Now you learn to move in your truth. Gently, deliberately. Grace isn't about beauty, Alex. It's about peace." She handed me a brush. You'll do your own face today. But not to hide, to highlight what you already are. I hesitated, holding the brush. I don't even know where to start.
That's the point, she said.
Don't copy what you've seen. Just follow how it feels. I began slowly, the bristles soft against my skin. At first, my hand shook, afraid of mistakes. But her voice guided me calmly.
Breathe.
There's no wrong way to be yourself. Each motion became easier, smoother. I wasn't painting over who I was revealing it. When I finally looked in the mirror, the face staring back at me wasn't perfect, but it was serene. She smiled. Now, she said, stand up. I obeyed. Walk to the window, she instructed. Not with caution, with awareness. Feel how the world moves around you. It sounded strange, but I did as she said. I walked slowly, not performing, not pretending.
Just being.
My reflection in the glass caught the morning light, and for a moment, it felt like I was watching someone I was finally proud of becoming. Do you see it now? She asked softly. What? The calm, she said. The strength that doesn't need to prove itself. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. I think I do. Good, she said. Because tomorrow you'll need it. Her tone shifted, calm, but heavy with meaning. What happens tomorrow? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment before answering. Tomorrow is when the world will test whether this piece is real. I frowned.
How?
She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up the lavender shawl and draped it gently around my shoulders. Wear this tonight, she said. When you see yourself before bed, don't focus on how you look. Focus on what you feel. You're not a project. You're a becoming. Her words settled into me like sunlight on cold skin. That night, I stood before my mirror again, wrapped in lavender and silence. My makeup was slightly smudged, my hair imperfect, but I never felt more at ease. For the first time, the reflection didn't feel like an effort. It felt like home. And in that quiet, I realized something I hadn't dared to admit. I didn't need her permission anymore. She'd never been forcing me. She'd been guiding me toward a truth I'd already carried inside. The discipline had never been about obedience. It was about releasing fear. I touched the bracelet, its silver cool against my skin, and whispered to my reflection, I'm not pretending anymore. The person in the mirror smiled back, calm, sure, alive. That was day 6. The day peace replaced fear, and I stopped chasing transformation because I had already become it. The morning of the 7th day began with silence. No message from her. No candlelight waiting across the street. Only the hum of the city, faint through my window. I thought maybe she'd forgotten, but deep down I knew she hadn't. This silence was the lesson. The final one. When I finally opened my door, a small envelope was waiting on the step. My name, written in her elegant looping script. I opened it slowly, hands trembling. Today, you don't come to me. The world will come to you. Where what feels like you. Meet yourself in public light. I'll be watching but unseen. M. The words struck like a pulse. My heart raced. Public light? It meant stepping outside as her. As the person I'd only dared to be behind closed doors. I stared at the clothes hanging in my closet. The soft pastel blouse she'd once chosen, the flowing skirt, the lavender shawl she'd given me yesterday. My fingers hesitated, but something inside whispered, you've already crossed the line. Don't go back now. The moment I walked out of my door, the air felt different. Colder. Sharper. Every sound louder. I could hear my own heels tapping against the pavement, deliberate, fragile, real. At first, I kept my eyes down, afraid of every passing glance. But then I remembered her words, grace is peace. So, I lifted my chin. People passed. Some smiled. Some didn't look twice. One woman complimented my shawl. Another man looked confused, then simply nodded as he walked by. Each moment felt like a lifetime, tiny judgments and tiny kindnesses, all mixing together in a blur of sound and heartbeat. But the world didn't collapse. No one shouted. The sky didn't fall. I was just me, I found myself standing in front of a cafe window, the same kind of glass that once made me flinch. But this time, I saw someone different. Someone who wasn't pretending to fit in, but daring to exist. Inside the cafe, the barista smiled. "Love your look," she said brightly. I almost laughed from the shock. Thank you," I managed, my voice trembling but feminine, practiced, natural. When she handed me my drink, her eyes lingered kindly. "You seem nervous," she said gently. "First time out." I blinked, stunned. "Is it that obvious?" She grinned. "Only because I've been there." "You're doing great." Her words hit deeper than she could have known. I smiled, genuinely, freely, and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, I felt my phone vibrate. A message from an unknown number. "You passed. M." A flood of warmth filled my chest. Relief, pride, disbelief. I turned, half expecting to see her watching from somewhere nearby. But there was only sunlight, shimmering on shop windows, painting the city gold. I walked home slower this time. Not hiding. Just walking. My step steady, the skirt brushing softly against my legs, the breeze curling around me like a gentle affirmation. When I reached my mirror that evening, I didn't need to adjust anything. Not my hair, not my makeup. I looked straight into my reflection and whispered, "You did it." And for the first time, there was no echo of doubt, only peace. That night, another envelope appeared under my door. No name, no wax seal, just a note. 7 days were never about becoming her version of you. They were about remembering your own. I closed my eyes, tears warm against my cheeks. I finally understood. She hadn't changed me. She'd helped me see that I was never meant to be anyone else, just the truest, most fearless version of me. The mistress next door had given me something far rarer than beauty or confidence. She'd given me freedom. I didn't sleep that night. My body was still, but my mind kept replaying the day. The walk, the looks, the barista's smile, the sunlight on glass. Every detail felt etched into me like proof that I had existed as me, unhidden, unafraid. I thought that was the end. The lesson learned, the final test complete. But early the next morning, there was a gentle knock at my door. When I opened it, she stood there. The mistress. No mask, no commanding tone, just a soft smile that felt almost shy. "You did it," she said quietly. I nodded, too full of emotion to speak. She stepped inside and looked around my apartment, her eyes lingering on the mirror, the lavender shawl draped neatly across my chair, the bracelet still on my wrist. "You've made this space yours," she said. "It used to look like a cage. Now it feels like a room where someone lives." I exhaled slowly. "I thought you'd be watching. I kept looking for you." She smiled faintly. "I was. But from far enough that you couldn't lean on me. You didn't need to." We stood there in the soft morning light, silence folding between us. Not heavy this time, but peaceful. "I didn't think I could do it," I admitted. "I kept waiting for something bad to happen. For someone to laugh or point or—" "But they didn't," she finished. "Because the power you gave them to define you was never theirs to hold." Her words struck deep. I blinked hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said it would be discipline." I thought that meant control. But it wasn't, was it? "No," she said gently. "Discipline is devotion. To truth, to self, to courage. What I taught you wasn't how to obey me. It was how to listen to yourself." She moved closer, her expression softening further. "You're free now, Alex. Truly free. The person in the mirror doesn't need my approval anymore." I felt my throat tighten. "Then, what happens to us now?" She smiled, tender, almost wistful. "We go back to being neighbors." The words hit like sunlight, a little sad but right. This was never meant to be forever. It was a chapter, not a cage. Before she left, she reached for my wrist and unfastened the silver bracelet. For a moment, I thought she was taking it back. But then she placed it in my palm and closed my fingers around it. "Keep it," she said, "as a reminder of who you've already become." I looked down at it, the metal warm from her touch. "Will I see you again?" She smiled, already stepping toward the door. Whenever you see yourself clearly, you'll see me. And then she was gone. The door clicked softly behind her, leaving the room filled with nothing but morning light, gentle, golden, forgiving. I stood there for a long time, holding the bracelet, feeling the quiet hum of my heartbeat settle. When I turned toward the mirror one last time, the person looking back wasn't a project or a performance. It was me.
Whole. Honest. Free.
I smiled, not because I was supposed to, but because I finally could. The day Alex faced the world, and the world didn't break. It only reflected back the truth that had always been there. The first morning after the 7 days felt strange, not empty, but echoing. I woke up expecting a message, a note, another instruction. But there was only sunlight spilling across my sheets and the faint scent of lavender that lingered from the shawl resting on my chair. The silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like space, space to breathe, to exist, to begin. I moved through my apartment slowly, noticing things I'd never noticed before. The softness of the rug beneath my feet, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the way light curved gently along the edge of the mirror. Everything felt new, as if the world itself had exhaled with me. When I looked at my reflection, it didn't shock me anymore. I didn't tense or flinch. My reflection just was calm, natural, part of the morning. The person staring back wasn't a disguise or an experiment. She was me. I whispered, "Good morning," and for the first time, it didn't feel like pretending. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm: cars, voices, the smell of coffee and rain. I wrapped the lavender shawl around my shoulders before stepping out. The air brushed my face, cool and alive. I half expected the familiar sting of anxiety, the tightening in my chest that used to come with being seen. But today, it didn't come. I walked differently now. Slower, steadier. Like someone who belonged here, maybe not to everyone, but to herself. At a crosswalk, I caught my reflection in a store window. I smiled, a small, quiet smile that came from somewhere deeper than confidence. It came from peace. When I arrived at the cafe, the same barista from before recognized me. She grinned. "Lavender again?" she asked. I laughed softly. "Always." As I waited, I felt eyes around me. Curious, maybe judging, maybe admiring, but I didn't shrink. The city hadn't changed, but I had. The world no longer held power over how I felt. Only I did. When I got home, there was no letter on my step, no hidden message waiting. Just the quiet, just the life I'd been too scared to live. I took it all in, the mirror, the bracelet, the soft light, and realized I wasn't waiting for her anymore. The mistress had left something behind that couldn't be taken back, the ability to stand without her shadow beside me. That night, I sat by the window, legs curled beneath me, city lights flickering in the distance. My reflection shimmered faintly against the glass. I whispered, "I made it." And I meant it. The next morning, I woke with purpose. I didn't need guidance or validation. I just wanted to move forward. I cleaned my room, folded my clothes neatly, and placed the bracelet beside the mirror. Not as a symbol of obedience anymore, but as a reminder of awakening. I realized something as the sun climbed higher. Transformation isn't a single moment. It's not the day you put on the dress or walk outside. It's every quiet morning after, the choice to keep being who you are when no one's watching. The 7 days were over. But I knew now that the real journey had only just begun. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear her voice. That soft, certain tone that used to fill the air like it owned gravity itself. But the mornings are silent now, and that silence feels right. It's been weeks since the 7th day. The lavender shawl still hangs near the window, catching the breeze like a ghost of who I used to be. The bracelet rests on my nightstand, a silver loop of memory. I don't wear it every day anymore, but I touch it often, just to remind myself that I once had to learn to breathe as me. Now, I don't need lessons. I just live. When I walk down the street, I don't think about how others see me. Sometimes they smile, sometimes they stare, sometimes they don't notice at all. But every glance now feels smaller than it once did. I used to think their eyes could define me. Now I know they can't. My reflection, that old battlefield, has turned into a quiet friend. I see both my histories there, the one who hid and the one who rose. I don't erase either. They coexist in me, layered like skin and shadow. The mistress once told me that discipline was devotion, not control. I understand that now. Devotion isn't about perfection. It's about showing up for yourself, even when you're scared, even when the world is loud. I used to think transformation was about changing everything, my look, my walk, my voice. But now I see it was never about becoming someone else. It was about allowing myself to be the person I had always been beneath the noise. Sometimes I pass her house. The curtains are closed, the door painted fresh. It looks the same, but I know she's gone. I don't knock. I don't need to. Some lessons only stay beautiful because they end. At night, I sit by my window, the same place where I first saw her across the street. I can still remember that version of me. The boy frozen in confusion, fear tangled with curiosity. If I could reach back through time, I'd take his hand and whisper, "You're not broken. You're just waiting to bloom." And maybe that's what she was, not a teacher, not a manipulator, not a mystery. Maybe she was just the mirror I needed when I couldn't bear to face my own. Now I carry that mirror inside. I don't need her reflection anymore, because I have my own. When I smile at myself before bed, it's not triumph. It's gratitude. Gratitude that I survived the confusion. That I stayed when I wanted to disappear. That I allowed myself to change, not for approval, but for peace. The mistress next door taught me how to see, but I taught myself how to stay seen. And that, I think, is the real freedom, not pretending, not performing, but belonging quietly to your own truth. As the night deepens, I close my eyes and whisper the words she left me with. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering who you were all along. And for the first time in my life, I believe it.